friends of the show. We are back with another episode of the Ferris Classic Rock Show. A big thanks for your emails, suggestions, and your support on our social media platforms. Continue to email us at theferriswheelshow@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Listen to a new show every week. Just tune in each Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. New York City time, on Cap City Beats, located at www.capcitybeats.ca. Okay, buckle up for some serious rock talk. Today we talk about the biggest yes or no question. It has caused debate throughout the years. It's not a simple question like do you prefer Winston or Camel cigarettes, or who wore the assless chaps better, David Lee Roth or Axl Rose. Considering it was a post on Roth's Instagram, we will give him the thumbs up. The topic today is one that makes AC/DC fans either offended, defensive, or having them say, "Oh, shut up." That's the right one. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, it's Bon versus Brian debate. Who was better? Now, I've spoken to a few AC/DC fans in Facebook groups, online forums, and let me tell you, they present arguments on both fronts. Is there really a wrong or right answer? Well, after this segment, we will have the answer that hopefully we can all agree on. As a kid growing up, given my age for the longest time, I only knew Brian Johnson as the lead singer of AC/DC. It was the later years in my teens when I was able to explore the record shops on my own that I found out that Brian Johnson was not the original singer. There was Bon Scott before him. Mind-blowing to me as I never knew. Then, much later in my life, I discovered that Bon Scott had replaced Dave Evans, who was the original singer for AC/DC. That was a massive WTF. Here's some more fuel to that massive fire that is going on in my mind. Dave Evans refused to go on stage and perform. Can we have a WTF just one more time? This is one of those moments where you give your head a shake. Now, for those of you that know me on a personal level or through our podcast, you all know how I feel about singers being replaced. I always side with the one who started it all. Now this is totally different. It's not the David Lee Roth versus Sammy Hagar, Steve Perry versus Arnel Pineda, Vince Neil versus John Corabi, or even John Fogerty versus CCR. This is about preserving the brand and identity that carries on. AC/DC were formed in 1973 by guitarist Malcolm Young after his previous band, the Velvet Underground, collapsed. No relation to Lou Reed's American group. With his younger brother Angus serving as lead guitarist, who was only 18 at the time, and his sister suggested that he wear his school uniform on stage. The look became the band's visual trademark. The original lineup featuring singer Dave Evans, with ex-Easy Beats Harry Vanda and George Young, which is Malcolm and Angus's older brother, doing the producing. The band moved to Melbourne the following year, where drummer Phil Rudd, formerly of the Colored Balls, and bassist Mark Evans joined the lineup. The band's chauffeur, Bon Scott, became the lead vocalist when Dave Evans refused to go on stage. Previously, Scott had been a vocalist for the Australian prog rock group bands called Fraternity and the Valentines. More importantly, he helped cement the group's image as brutes. He had several convictions for minor criminal offenses and was rejected by the Australian Army for being socially maladjusted. AC/DC were socially maladjusted. Throughout their career, they favored crude, double entendres, and violent imagery, all spiked with mischievous sense of fun. So let's have some AC/DC facts. AC/DC first ever headlined a show was at the Melbourne Festival Hall on November 4th, 1975. Cheap Trick are the only band that AC/DC ever invited to encore with them. Back in the very early days when Dave Evans fronted the band, they performed a set of Chuck Berry and Rolling Stones at close friends' weddings. One guest asked him to play Zorba the Greek, but the band did not know it. Malcolm said, "Give me a minute." He went away and practiced for a while, all from ear, and then Malcolm said, "Tell him, yeah, we'll do it." Number 4. When Iran was struck by computer hackers sometime between 2009 and 2010, the attacking virus Stuxnet caused thousands of computers in Iran's nuclear facilities to break down, all blasting Thunderstruck at full volume. Number 5. Angus's wife Ellen told a fan who was traveling on the same train as her and Angus between gigs that when the band were recording The Razor's Edge, they once came into the studio to discover backing vocals where none had been recorded. The vocals sounded just like Bon Scott. When Bon Scott posted out Christmas cards in 1979, something he did every year, he didn't pay enough postage, meaning many of the cards were delayed and arrived late. After Bon had passed away on February 19, 1980, that's when the cards seem to have been received by his guests, or friends, may I say. Break my heart when you hear that. The original singer in the Aussie band The Velvet Underground, with whom Malcolm Young played before he formed AC/DC, was none other than a guy named Brian Johnson. But not the Brian Johnson we're going to talk about, another Brian Johnson. The very first time Bon Scott sang live with AC/DC was on October 5th, 1975, which coincidentally is Brian Johnson's birthday. The original album covers for Highway to Hell is purported to have been the devil driving a car, peering in his rearview mirror, with the band all seated in the back seat. A photo shoot was even conducted in Staten Island, New York, which featured the band hitchhiking. In the end, the record company balked all at the idea. Instead of using a shot from the Powerage shoot, superimposing horns and a satanic tail on Angus, one of the new shots was used for the back cover. Number 10. Angus Young is well known for playing his now trademark Gibson SG guitar. The reason is that the SG guitar neck is the only one he can comfortably get his hands around. And number 11, AC/DC was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003. So let's talk about Bon Scott. So a little bit of facts about Bon Scott. He's best remembered as the original frontman of the legendary hard rock band AC/DC. Singer Bon Scott was born Ronald Belford Scott in Kiermaier, Scotland on July 9, 1946. As a child, he began performing in his father's bagpipe band, which you can hear Bon playing the bagpipes on the song It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll. Bon relocated with his family in Australia in 1952, later playing in a local rock outfit called The Spectators at age 15, or may I say The Spectors. 1967, Scott had joined the Melbourne-based group The Valentines, making his recorded debut with the single Every Day I Have to Cry. The band soon emerged as one of the most popular on the Aussie circuit. In mid-1969, issuing an EP, My Old Man's a Groovy Old Man. A drug bust destroyed the Valentines' public image. However, and after cracking the national top 30 with their 1970 hit Juliet, the band dissolved. Scott joined the Sydney Blues Rock Unit fraternity, issuing the LP Livestock in 1971. Flaming Gala followed a year later. Scott was a big fan of show tunes. He had a passion as he picked that up as a boy. In 1973, Scott was involved in a motorcycle accident which left him comatose for several months, during which time fraternity disbanded. After recovering, he worked a series of odd jobs before recording a demo as a member of the short-lived Mount Lofty Rangers. 1974, Bon Scott joined AC/DC, recording the group's debut LP High Voltage a year later. AC/DC's ascent to international stardom culminated in 1979 when their LP Highway to Hell reached the US top 20. For some personal appearance, Bon would stick his fringe down with scotch tape after he'd shower to prevent it from curling too much. Bon's early morning ritual was to gargle with red wine and honey to help retain the raspy edge to his voice. Bon favored a prominent crease in his jeans and can often be found ironing his stage clothes on the bar before a gig. He was a stylish individual. The hit single Highway to Hell was written by Bon in relation to Canning Highway in Perth, Australia. That stretch of highway was immortalized in 1979's Highway to Hell, nicknamed for the fatal crashes that plagued its most dangerous intersection. February 19th, 1980, Scott passed away in an all-night drinking binge. In March of 2020, the city of Perth, Australia, honored the death of Bon Scott by closing off 10 kilometers of Canning Highway for 8 hours for AC/DC covers of concerts. 1980, the surviving members of the band tapping new vocalist Brian Johnson to record the classic Back in Black album to pay homage to their fallen frontman, Bon Scott. Bon was with AC/DC from 1973 to 1980. During his tenure with the band, he performed 880 shows and recorded 8 studio albums. Those albums were High Voltage, which was 1975, TNT, 1975. In 1976, he recorded another one, High Voltage. So the first one in 75 was the Australian cut, and then the 76 one, I believe, was the United States version. 1976, he did Dirty Deeds Done Cheap. 1977, Let There Be Rock. 1978, Powerage. 1978, If You Want Blood, You Got It. And then 1979, the famous album, Highway to Hell. So now we're moving on to the second singer of AC/DC, where everyone has learned to love for the past 40 years and counting. Brian Johnson. It's never easy to replace a founding member of a band who dies tragically, but AC/DC's Brian Johnson fit in with the Australian hard-rocking band perfectly, and it was accepted immediately by the group's legion of fans. Brian Johnson was born on October 5th, 1947, in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. Johnson sang with a church choir as a youngster, but like millions of other teenagers of the 60s, was taken by rock and roll. In early 1972, Johnson formed his first serious rock band, which was called USA. Just a few months later, the band changed their name to Geordie and focused on hitting it big in then thriving UK glam rock scene. The band scored several hits in their homeland, including the top 10, All Because of You, and the top 20, Can You Do It, although the glam scene was fading rapidly by the mid-70s. Geordie continued to play around England, but decided to call it by 1976. Johnson spent the next few years away from music, but eventually reformed Geordie in 1980, just as the band had signed a new record contract. Johnson was still doing voice jingles for extra money. The one that led to his audition with AC/DC was actually a commercial for the Hoover vacuum that he had to go record in London. And just across the road from that studio was Vanilla Studios, where he auditioned for AC/DC in 1980. AC/DC asked Johnson if he'd like to try out for the vacant lead vocalist position. His name was mentioned in a few different circles. A fan out of Cleveland had managed to hear his music and recommended to the legendary producer Mutt Lange. And Mutt Lange had made that call to have Brian Johnson get an audition. Interestingly enough, Bon Scott himself had once seen Johnson perform with Geordie and gave the singer a rave review to his AC/DC mates. Johnson quickly passed the audition and was offered the slot. Putting his Geordie days behind him, the group unsuccessfully tried to soldier on without Johnson, but Johnson was the frontman of Geordie and they could not continue. Johnson then became the new frontman of AC/DC. Not a bad trade-off. 1980's classic Back in Black became a monster hit right away. The album has become one of hard rock's all-time bestsellers over the years and pushed the band over the top globally. This album only took 6 weeks to record. Johnson wrote his first song, Shook Me All Night Long, and the lyrics were inspired by his passion for cars while sitting on a bog. Johnson was initially hesitant to go and audition for the band. He said in an interview on The Stern Show on May 25, 2011, he was 32 years old at the time, living in his parents' basement, and he felt that he was past his prime. He went as it was AC/DC, and he figured, if AC/DC is calling me, it's got to be a good thing. Brian Johnson's first audition, for AC/DC, he sang A Whole Lot of Rosie, Highway to Hell, and Ike and Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits. At his second audition at London's Easy Hire Studios, he was asked to come up with the lyrics to Givin' the Dog a Bone. Johnson, as like I said, was living with his parents and was in his 30s while still performing with Geordie. Wondering where it was going to happen, he had ended up opening up an automotive shop. AC/DC was already established with Bon Scott. With Brian Johnson's first album with the band, Back in Black, that blew up the ratings and placed that album as one of the top 100 classic rock masterpieces. There was an article written by UltimateClassicRock.com regarding the 100 classic rock masterpieces, and Back in Black is there. Johnson's powerful voice proved to be the perfect foil for AC/DC's high-energy, hard-hitting rock, as the band continued to churn out best-selling albums and sold-out tours. Johnson fronted AC/DC hit albums, the tops being 1981's Worldwide For Those About to Rock, 1986's motion picture soundtrack Who Made Who, 1990's The Razor's Edge, and their first release of the 21st century, Stiff Upper Lip. By now, an AC/DC member far longer than Scott, Johnson remains as one of rock's instantly recognizable voices when he sings like, "Who made who? Who made you?" Well, I could try. Brian has been with AC/DC since 1980 till present day. What Bon Scott started with the band up until his passing, Brian has harnessed their rock identity for 40 years and counting. He has recorded 13 studio albums and has done over 1,274 performances. It is remarkable what has been accomplished thus far, and the band has never lost steam. They are that locomotive engine that continues to power through and sell out stadiums worldwide. They are the founders of arena rock. During Brian Johnson era, the albums are as follow: 1980, Back in Black; 1981, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You; 1983, Flick of the Switch; 1985, Fly on the Wall; 1988, Blow Up Your Video; 1990, The Razor's Edge; 1992, Live; 1995, Ball Breaker. I could refer that album to many people I know. The year 2000 was Stiff Upper Lip; 2008, Black Ice; 2012, Live at River Plate; 2014, Rock or Bust; and the recent album, which I give a complete 5 stars to, is 2020's Power Up. Now that we've given a small sample size of what each singer has achieved with the band, at the beginning of the show I did mention that we'll have an answer to who is better between Bon and Brian. This is an answer that will make everyone get along. The answer is simple. It's both. Now I'll tell you why. What Bon created with the band, giving them that classic rock identity, stage presence, and the popularity they had achieved in those 7 years, was epic. And the bond he had with the group was irreplaceable. And there was trust in the work that they did. They were able to produce and record 8 albums in that time before Bon had passed. And when Bon did pass on, Brian came in as the new guy. Brian from Newcastle, he was known, and what he has done with the band for over 40 years and counting, he came in and maintained the band's legacy and stage presence. He did not come in to be the next Bon. He became Brian as the lead singer of AC/DC and has been with that band through their continuous success. Bon and Brian are AC/DC. That is the answer. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to thank you all for tuning in. And like we say on the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show, rock on and see you next time. I'm your host, Ferris Kennedy, and you can just call me Kennedy. Take care.